Hi everybody, we're looking at glutes today, the large muscles through the back of the hips, or buttocks as many people refer to them. Your gluteus maximus is the largest muscle in your body. It's meant to be one of the strongest. In many cases it can be quite weak, and that can contribute to a lot of low back pain. And the muscle, even if it is strong, can still give you a lot of low back pain if you have over-exercised it or you've injured it somehow. So today we're going to look at self-massage for that area and some stretching to help relieve your glutes and your low back. So basically your glutes attach around the top part of your pelvis. So when you put your hands on the hips and you go just below the bone, where the bone starts, your glutes attach all around there. They attach where your sacrum, that bony triangle is. They attach around the sacrum all the way down to your tailbone, and then they come across and attach on what's called your greater trochanter, which is where your thigh bone, the top of your thigh bone is, before it takes a little movement across and into your hip joint. Your hip joint is right in here. If I could get my two fingers together, that is where your hip joint is. If you're getting pain out here, generally it's muscular. So there's a lot you can do yourself to help improve the way that feels. If your glutes are weak, you will often overcompensate by using your back muscles instead of using your glutes. If your hamstrings are very tight, that can also be because you're not using your glutes sufficiently, but they will also hinder how you use your glutes as well. When we stand, if we're too anterior, the glutes cannot function well in that position. So having a strong core through the lower abdominal muscles, your glutes, your multifidus muscle in your back, and your pelvic floor muscles in the base of your pelvis all help to keep that area stable. And if any of those muscles are over strong, over weak compared to the others, then that can upset the balance and cause a lot of discomfort. So today we're going to look at loosening off through the hip flexors, the hamstrings, the glutes, and they will all help, and the low back, that all of that will help to get balance back in that area and reduce any pain. There's also the adductor muscles and abductors, which bring the leg away. Adductors bring the leg across. We won't go into those today because it becomes too big a field to do in one short video. So we're going to start with doing some dynamic stretching to help loosen up the area. I'm going to do some wood chopping. We'll take the feet a little bit beyond hip width apart, take a nice big breath in, and as you come forward you're going to bend the knees slightly and bring the hands down and coming up, and we're going to do this using the breath. So we're going to take a big breath in and as we come forward, and breathing in and so this is going to help to start loosening up through the hips, get a bit of blood flowing, because stretches always work better when the muscle is warmed up and has some blood flowing through it. Big breath in. Okay. And then we're going to do some leg swings. So you may need to hold on to something to keep you steady, or you can just put your hands on your hips, swing the legs, or bring the opposite arm forward. That makes it a little easier to balance. And the other side. rotate the hips, nice big circles. So you want to squeeze your buttocks as you go forward, draw your tummy muscles in as you go back. So nice big stretches through there. And the opposite way. Big circles through the hips. And then we're going to feet hip width apart, just drop one knee and then the other knee. Clunk, clunk. So wiggling the hips, just working through the feet really, at the knees really. And that will help loosen up all around through here. And then bringing one knee up, out to the side and down. And the other one. Opening up through the hips. And then going the opposite way, bringing the leg out to the side first and then to the front. So if you're going walking, running, swimming, cycling, any of those things, these sorts of dynamic stretching exercises are great to warm up the muscles before you go. And when you get back, you can do some static stretching to relax them. Okay, coming down, come into a hip flexor stretch and going from there and back. And again, this will just loosen up through the glutes a bit. If you don't like the knee on the ground, you can do this with the back leg straight. You want to feel a bit of a stretch through here as you come forward, and you'll get a bit of a stretch through the glute on the other side. You'll also work into your hamstrings. And then swapping sides. Don't push too hard, you're warming up. Okay, so now that we've got those muscles warmed up a bit, going to do a bit of self-massage on them. And if we warm up, then do some massage, we will get further with our stretch when we get to the stretching side of it. So to massage through the glutes, again you can use one of these sort of massage balls or your trusty rubber dog ball or tennis ball, and you can get onto the ground on your back, bring the knees up, place the ball in underneath the buttock, and you can roll onto it. You can keep moving the ball around if you like, till you find this spot that really needs some work. And you can either just bring a little weight onto it, or you can roll the whole body up onto the ball, which will get in quite deeply. Okay, so you can use a bigger one or the smaller one. Smaller one's probably a little more intense because it's a finer point to it. Okay, so you can do that lying on the ground. You can also do the same thing standing against the wall. So if you put your ball in a sock, and then you can get your ball up against the wall, and you can just wiggle from side to side or move up and down, and then just keep repositioning the ball where it needs to be. So the balls are great. You can also use foam rollers. So there's knobbly bobbly ones, they're a little more intense, and then there's the smoother ones, they're not as intense. So with your foam roller through the glutes, you do need to use your hands a bit. If it gets hard on your wrist, you're better to make a fist and then your wrist is locked, and you can just roll up and down, and you can roll from side to side, just whatever you need to do to get into those sore bits. And if you're working glutes, you can also get into the low back. You need to be a little bit more careful with backs. And you can also do hamstrings. So, getting in like so with the hamstring. I don't find the foam roller gets into my hamstrings as well as I would like. So I find that if I get a ball either size on a firm surface and put a bit of body weight onto my leg, I can get in really well. So the big ball or the smaller ball, it doesn't work on a soft chair. You do need to have a wooden seat or some sort of very firm seat, and you can roll around on that. If you've got nice slidey pants like I have, makes it easy to glide around. Okay, so you can either do a little often, so have your ball handy and do 5 minutes every night, not too intense, or you can give yourself 1 or 2 really good intense 15 to 20 minutes worth of massage through the glute area a week if you prefer. You don't want to do too much too often, or you can just make yourself very sore and you're not allowing the muscle time to recover. So we're going to do some stretching now. So sitting cross-legged, if you find you are too tight to sit cross-legged, often the hamstrings are too tight, you can make yourself a nice little bolster, sit on that, you'll find that the knees will sit down much better. If you've got your knees up here, it just is not going to work too well. And you just make your bolster as high as you need it. So sitting up nice and tall, just going to walk the hands forward. This will get up into the upper part of the glute more, where the muscle is coming from the hip down towards that greater trochanter. So it's good for that area. You can also come over one leg at a time, and if I come here, place the hand on the opposite knee, take my chest towards the knee I'm over, and I'm getting that all through that low back upper glute area. And then I can come through the centre again, and then over the other knee again. If I put my hand on that knee, push that down slightly, that gives a lovely low back upper glute stretch. Of course, it depends whereabouts in the muscle you're tight. So some stretches you may not feel so much, and others you'll really get a good stretch with. And then coming back to centre, and then if you're going to do this one, you swap the feet over and you come back through the front again. And with this one, if you like, you can also drop your head and round your back, get the whole back area. And then come over one knee, push the other knee away. And coming over the opposite knee. And often with these stretches, it's not so much about getting down, it's about pushing your chest forward, and as you push the chest forward, you work from the hips and you will increase the stretch. and relax. From there we'll go into what we call the 90-90 stretch. So both knees and calves should be at 90 degrees, which is 90 degrees. If the foot is in a lot closer, it's not at 90 degrees, but you may need it to be closer if you're very tight. If you come forward and your foot is in the groin like that and you're not getting much of a stretch, you need to take the leg out further. And again with this one, you can fold forward. In that position, I'm not really getting any stretch at all. But if all I do is now push my chest towards the knee, then I'm getting a good stretch. So it's all about rocking forward, which changes where the hips are sitting through the back, and that will increase your stretch. And you want to do some slow, deep breathing as you stretch. As you exhale, you can move a little further into the stretch. And then coming back up, and we'll swap sides. So centre of the chest, over the knee, walk the hands forward, and working with the breath, deep breath in, and exhaling as you move deeper into the stretch. You may notice one side is much tighter than the other, and if that's the case, you may do several stretches on the really tight side and only one or two on the other. Holding the stretch for 30 to 60 seconds. If you're new to stretching, 15 to 20 seconds is enough. You can overstretch and you can strain things by overstretching, so you don't want to do that. So they're the 90-90 stretch. The next one we're going to do is the half twist. Now the easier version of half twist, right leg's out straight, left leg's over the top, sitting up tall. If you struggle to sit up tall in this position, again you can use your bolster in underneath your buttocks. And we're going to wrap the right arm around the left leg, so opposite arm to leg, not the same side. And we're pulling the leg across the midline. The left hand goes behind. Keep fairly upright. You don't want to be coming back here. So I usually come up on my fingertips and rotate to look over the opposite shoulder. This is a really good spinal stretch as well as getting into the glutes. And I find it's a good position as well. If you make a fist, you can get in and give yourself a bit of a rub through the glute. You can use the fist to do a bit of what we call tapotement, which is sort of hammering, a bit like tenderising steak. Okay, and we'll do the same thing on the other side. You can look over the opposite shoulder. You want to feel as though you're rotating from the base of the spine all the way up to the top of the neck. And coming back to centre. Now, if that was enough of a stretch for you, you can repeat that. Otherwise, this time we're going to bring the right foot in underneath the left. Take the left leg over the top and we'll go into a full half twist. You should be able to get both buttocks flat on the ground and keep pulling the arm across and looking over the shoulder. And some slow deep breaths. Swapping sides. We'll bring the left ankle in underneath the right knee. Right leg goes on the outside of the left leg, sitting up nice and tall. Left arm brings the right leg across the midline and looking over your right shoulder. Sit up nice and tall. and coming back to centre. Okay, we're going to do figure 4 stretch. This one, you put the outside of the right ankle on the front of the left knee. Bring the legs towards you. Bring your right hand in the gap between your legs. Left hand round the outside of the left leg. Interlace fingers behind the thigh and draw the leg towards you. Do some slow, deep breaths. On the exhalation, try and bring the leg in a little closer. Okay, we're going to swap sides. I'm going to show you another way of doing this one. Let's get those out of the way. Okay, so if you've got a nice convenient wall or a couch or a bed, you can place your foot on the wall, and the easiest way, if you're actually a bit tight, is put your foot higher up on the wall. I haven't got one to put mine on, and then bring this one in. Then you can bring that down and that will bring the leg in closer. Okay, if that's not close enough, you'll have to wiggle in a bit closer. Okay. Once you're in this position, you don't have to pull with your hands, so it's a little more relaxing. It also frees up your hands to play around with the right leg a bit. So I can push the knee away, and that will give me a stretch through one part of my glutes. And I can bring the knee right in towards my chest, and that changes the stretch. Because the muscles are attached in a fan shape throughout the buttock, the stretch that gets this part of the muscle will be quite different to the stretch that gets this part and this part, because they're all coming in and converging on that greater trochanter. So it's very important to do different glute stretches, not always just do the same one. Okay. You can also try with these bringing the foot further down towards your groin to get the stretch. And there's one more that's very good. You bring your left knee forward and you flick the foot out to the side as you do this. Slide the other leg back. This is a yoga pose. You can either stay here or you can come forward onto your elbows or onto your forehead. And coming up, and you can do the same thing on the other side. You can use your hand to bring the foot further forward. The further forward the foot goes, the more intense the stretch. And again, you can come all the way down. You can stay up here, just whatever. The more you try and sit down into it, the more you'll feel the stretch as well. So I'm on my right shin and my left shin. I'm not sitting on my buttock. Okay, so quite important. If you sit on your buttock, you probably won't get so much of a stretch. You want to be on your shins only. And I will just come round this way just in case you can't see that from that angle. In that position. Too far forward. That position there. Okay. So we've loosened off through the glutes. if the hamstrings are very tight, they will impact on the glutes. So we're going to quickly do some hamstring stretching. The safest way to stretch your hamstrings is lying on the floor, because you can't overcompensate with your back in this position. And if your hamstrings are very tight, particularly if they're down here somewhere, bend the other knee and leave the foot on the floor. That will tilt the pelvis into a position that's easier to get this leg up. So if the leg's a bit bent, that's fine, but what you're going to aim for is a nice straight knee. You take a deep breath in, and breathing out, try and ease into the stretch a little more. If the leg is already straight, you can work on bringing it closer. If the knee is bent, as you exhale, you're going to try and get that leg a little straighter. Okay, and we'll do the same thing with the other side. Now, if you find it's quite easy to get your leg into this point, you're probably not too tight, you're going to straighten the other leg on the floor. That will increase the stretch quite a bit. You want to try and keep that other leg down on the floor and not lift it up. If it's lifted up, you're probably too tight in your hip flexors. So try and straighten that leg down on the floor, straighten this leg up in the air. Great, so there's that way of doing hamstrings. You can also bring right foot into the groin, sitting up straight on your bolster if you need it. Take a breath in and breathing out, folding forward over the leg. Again, the more you push your hips and chest forward and roll your tummy button towards your knee, the more of a stretch you will get. You can do one side. This can also get into the low back on the other hip. And if you're not getting a lot of hamstring stretch because you're already quite flexible, you can increase this one by bringing the foot up by the knee. Take a breath in, folding forward, and you'll feel that more through the glute. But only do that if you're not concentrating on trying to loosen up a tight hamstring. And coming back up. All of those stretches, it's a good idea to repeat them 2 or 3 times each side. By the time you've done the second and third repetition, the muscle will have loosened off much more. The other way of doing hamstrings is leg up on something. A lot of people go too high with the leg and think, oh yeah, I can get it all the way up there, and then they're sort of looking like this, trying to reach the foot. You're much better to go low, hands on hips. You want to come forward from where your hands are. So you're coming forward with flat back, chest down towards the knee. And I can get a really good stretch there, even though the leg's down quite low. Pays to have both feet facing forward. You don't really want this other foot facing out the opposite way. You want everything to be going forward. And you can vary the stretch a bit, bring your hands more over one side or over the other, because sometimes the outer and inner parts of the hamstring are tighter than what's through the centre. And swapping sides. Again, breath in, breathing out, folding forward into the stretch. Keep breathing, relaxing into the stretch a little more as you breathe. Pays to have this back knee just slightly bent. You don't want that locked back, can put a lot of tension through the tendons. Okay, it doesn't matter where the hands go. It's more important that you're feeling the stretch in the hamstring. Great. So the last thing we're going to look at is our loosening off our hip flexors. So glutes are primarily hip extensors, and they do some external rotation, a little bit of internal rotation with glute medius as well. Your hip flexors flex the hip. So they're opposing muscles. If you're very tight through your hip flexors, you will always have problems through your glutes, because your pelvis is constantly being pulled this way. If you've got very tight hamstrings, and it's going to pull your pelvis that way, and poor old pelvis is piggy in the middle getting pulled from both sides. So we need to try and get that balance. So to loosen off through your hip flexors, you can come down into 90 degrees, 90 degree here, 90 degree there. You tuck that tail under, so you want to draw your tummy button towards your spine, activate your lower abdominal muscles, and you may already feel a good stretch through the front of that right groin area. If not, you can increase the stretch by bringing the arm up. You can bring the arm over to the left a little and keep squeezing through that right buttock. You should be getting a good stretch through there now. Keep breathing, slow deep breaths. Okay, and then we'll swap and do the other side. If you have a sore knee, which I have at the moment, get some bolstering in under that knee, and that is often enough. 90 degrees with both knees again. You're going to tuck your tail under, draw the tummy button towards the spine, activate that left glute by squeezing, bring the left arm up, extend up, and you can come over towards the right a little, so you're pushing that hip forward and breathing. Now, one of your hip flexor muscles is also one of your quad muscles through the front here. It crosses the knee and the hip joint. It's the only one of the quads that does that. And to get into that and really get those hip flexors, again, pays to have a wee bolster. You need a wall or a piece of furniture. And you use a towel because this piece of furniture is a bit hard on my foot. Now, if you're very flexible, you can bring the knee right up against what you're against. However, for a lot of people that will be too intense. So you'll have your knee a lot closer to you, and you can come back up into that 90 position with the knee and bring the arm up. You should now feel the hip flexor stretch in the groin, but all the way down to the knee as well, so because you're getting that quad. You need to keep this back leg nice and relaxed because you risk cramping in your hamstring if it's not relaxed. Okay, so some slow deep breathing and coming down. The other way of doing this is you can get into the more yoga position, but it's important if you're stretching like this that you squeeze that buttock on the left, that my left leg is back, so I'm squeezing the left buttock, and that you keep your back straight. If you arch up, it can overcompensate and you don't always get a good stretch. So you want to move the whole body forwards towards the floor. But you may find that gives you the better stretch. Okay, so hip flex is really important, especially if you're doing a lot of sitting. In a seated position, your glutes are getting overstretched, your hip flexors are getting shortened. So when you stand up, you feel like it's, oh my goodness. and that's often because these need to be released and these need to be strengthened, but we'll go into strengthening another time. So thank you very much for joining me. I hope you found that helpful and have fun with it. Thanks, bye.